Bookseller Crow on the box.
Actually.
Tales from an empty bookshop.
Hello!
Hello!
Welcome to the latest edition of How? Welcome to our bubble.
Thank you. Thank you.
And tonight we're going to discuss one or two books that we've all, the three of us, have taken to over lockdown and since.
Yeah, and I thought also
Once
it just-
Justine's hung the
Yeah.
washing out.
washing up. Also, what I thought, just sort
Cheers.
of say what happened over. Just briefly say what happened over lockdown as well, because some of our customers might not know the sheer amount of exercise you were doing.
Do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, we had a very interesting time exploring the territory when after lockdown, when we got our orders came in and
The shop was closed, wasn't
the
it?
shop was shut, but John was parcelling books up left, right and centre, and then we had to go out on the road on foot. And we did. We clocked up about 17,000 steps a day, apparently, according to somebody's contraption.
And there are some nice houses out there.
Yes. It was very interesting to see where everybody lived. Also, it was a bit of a surprise. People that you expect to live in a big house were living in not very big
Tents.
houses, and people that you thought actually had no money at all were living in massive
Mansions.
houses.
Fantastic.
We had a couple of instances where cars pulled up alongside us and people bipped their horns because they recognised us from behind as we trudged along. But all in all, that was we enjoyed that, didn't we?
Good. Great. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a different time. Now, of course, we're open and open-ish. Things are going okay-ish.
Yeah, no, they're going okay. Yeah, it's a lot more work than just opening a door and letting people buy books, because there are all these different rules and regulations that we have to abide by, which is good. We need to abide by them.
Also, we need to keep ourselves safe.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
whether there's rules or not, you know.
Anyway,
Yes,
Karen, do you want to
hence
kick
why
off?
we're in the bubble.
We're in the bubble.
Yes, we're here tonight
Shall we
to talk about the books. And I'm going to kick off with one of my favourite books over this year, and it is Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli. And I was, to the start of lockdown, in March I booked a trip to Tucson and Arizona to do some research for the book I'm working on, and of course that got cancelled. But when I'd first posted about how excited I was to be going back to Arizona, Roz from Review Bookshop posted, "You must read this before you go." So it all came about quite sweetly that when I couldn't go, I thought, well, at least I can read around the area. And this basically just opened my eyes to more, I think, than I would ever have experienced by going there. So in a way, there was a kind of bonus. And the story's about a New York family living in New York, even though Valeria Luiselli is part Mexican, but she's I think she's an alien in New York, if that's the right terminology. And they go on a road trip to Arizona, and their road trip, which is also interjects a bit of auto-fiction in the sense of she did really go on a road trip and she took photographs, and the poetry and the books she was reading are sort of weaved into part of the narrative, and it's really exciting. I'm a big fan of auto-fiction, and to me that was great. But then how she cleverly sort of also knits into the story the story of the lost children coming from Mexico over the border, and it's led me it's allowed me to get to some really good research on it, and also just realising much more than whatever we're told. And I just think, to me, it was this book feels like an art project. And
that's what it felt like to me.
And I really found that exciting, because it sort of questions the role of fiction as well, when there's so much more serious things going on. How do you write a novel? Is a novel enough? And those sorts of questions.
If I'm not, I didn't read it. I know you guys, you read it as well, because it was also part of book group later after you read it. It was your suggestion. But it also relates to sound, doesn't it? It's about listening and sound.
That's right. The characters, the husband and wife, are both sound artists, and they're recording sound. So the book is full of sound, and I was reading it at the beginning of lockdown when there was no sound in Penge. I mean, it was the quietest Penge I've ever known, and I relished in it. But then, so this book became louder, and I don't think that, hopefully, those conditions aren't going to happen again. But it was incredibly meaningful for me, because I had a different experience with a book that I think I ever would have.
Also topical, because
totally topical.
All the so-called migrants, the refugees, the people headed towards the borders.
And she talks about not just following the American dream, following a kind of dream to just be able to stay put somewhere. That's what America's kind of become for so many people. And other countries as well, and that really came across, and I found really good. I would thoroughly recommend it. It sort of woke me up as well to the idea that it was this wall, and these things were there. This has been going on for a very long time. This isn't just a recent wall, even though the wall has gone up only recently, but. Yeah, it may be more politically aware, which I'm always pleased about.
Excellent.
Very interesting.
Good.
What else have you got in your bag
today?
Right,
yes. Well, going back to an old favourite, I haven't read her whole oeuvre, but...
so much there, darling.
This also is a book I read over lockdown, and it's as you can see, a very slim book by Muriel Spark, who is one of my favourite authors still to this day. And this is The Finishing School, which I hadn't heard of. I think it's one of her lesser known novels, I'm not sure. You probably know it quite well. But it's really funny and sharp, and takes place... Again, it's another sort of book that was good to read, because it takes place on the edge of Lake Geneva, and in Switzerland, and it's about a would-be novelist and his wife running a finishing school, and this young 17-year-old chap turns up, and this school's quite strange, and I don't think sort of very above board, but they're raking in the money.
Great premise.
Yeah, exactly. But this young 17-year-old turns up who's a great novelist, and the older would-be novelist becomes very suspicious about this young man and thinks he's kind of doing something a bit underhand. So it's really about this older novelist and this young, talented upstart, and the sort of friction and sort of unravelling between them. And I won't give too much away, but she's really just so precise in the way she describes loads of characters, so she'll be able to paint a big scene really quickly, which I think,
in a nice slender
in a slender book. And she never fails to amaze me, her writing. So
she's truly one of the best, isn't she?
Yeah, I fully recommend that as a for anyone who's looking to write as well. Lots of characters in one scene, and seeing how that they can do that sort of quite swiftly and confidently. I'd recommend that.
Do you want to have a go with one of yours?
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I can. Maybe I'll... Yes.
I've got to drink a sip of wine. I'm getting a bit dry.
I don't want to break up the mood a little bit.
No, go for it.
Some children's books.
Yay!
If we're willing.
Yeah, why not?
I'm Not a Label is by Kerry Burnell, who is a marvellous actress, writer, telepresenter, CBBC you might know her from, and she's done children's fiction, picture books and novels, and this is a non-fiction book by her, I Am Not a Label, published by the great people at Wide Eyed, who managed somehow to make children's non-fiction look fabulous before you've even gone near the content.
Are they quite a new publisher?
Newish, the last few years.
Yeah.
This covers, look how glorious that is, that's just the end papers. Covers various people, mainly in the arts, who have overcome disabilities of one kind or another, be it Beethoven, who was,
Pardon?
yeah, well, there you go. Not allowed to even joke about that. All the way through to the great Lady Gaga, known as the Gargs in our house, who struggles with a chronic illness. Wonderful bits on Matt Haig, great writer who has struggled with depression. Demi Lovato. A few athletes, all the way through, right to the end. Aaron Phillip, who's a model, Lil Wayne, and Dynamo. Lots of information there for kids. Brilliant illustrations.
Oh, it's beautiful,
Yeah,
isn't it?
About strengths, about ability, about courage, imagination, charisma, character, all the stuff that you need in life to succeed when you don't have any kind of disability. So, you put that in the mix, and Kerry's come up with a really good choice, and it is fabulously interesting. And I love the fact that when you pick up children's books, even as an adult, you think you know everything, and you don't, and you end up reading them yourself. I've got a couple under the bed, that I treat as history books. Also helps that Kerry is a local girl.
Is she?
Yeah, she's living down in Penge. Yeah. Yeah. She's smashing. She's, great, absolute great.
Must be something in the water.
Yeah, must be. And then I discovered this author, Ross Montgomery, through Kerry. Kerry had a book published just before lockdown, back in the days of the launch was at Streatham Ice Rink. Back in the days when we could, all go to the ice rink and go around in circles for hours and hours without fear of crashing into anybody.
Cough on each other, spill drinks on each other, all of that.
Wear each other's shoes.
All of the above. And this author, Ross Montgomery, was there there were other authors there that had come to the launch, and he introduced himself, and I forgot all about him, of course. And then one day he walked into the bookshop and said hi, and I thought, where do I know him from? And he ordered something, and I asked him his name, and he told me, and I thought, oh God, that's where I know him from. I must remember to look his stuff up. And in the meantime, one of the things that we've discovered through lockdown, well, I've discovered, the children's area being my personal fiefdom, because we can no longer have children climbing up the shelving and licking everything, as Evie Wilde described it so eloquently. But one of the things I've discovered is that without people having the ability to choose for themselves, they come in with quite high expectations as to what you're going to have on the shelf. So people will come in and say, oh yes, I need something for a 3-year-old. It's got to have turtles in it. Or I need something for a 4-year-old about space, but it mustn't have dark sky in it, and it mustn't be scary, and it mustn't be about the night time, or it mustn't be and it really does, I mean, back in the old days when I was asked way back when for a book on the steam fairs of Lincolnshire and told that we were rubbish because we didn't have it, now seems a long time ago, and I'm at, using my imagination anyway. So I look up Ross Montgomery, and there, can you believe it, is Space Tortoise.
Brilliant.
Encompasses both space and Tortoise, and I immediately got it in. Illustrated by the adorable David Litchfield, who did the Bear and the piano books.
Oh, yeah.
I got it in, and instantly some guy comes in and he says, I need to buy something for a 3-year-old, and I don't really know what he likes, but and I got a few books out.
Not
and he
all
saw
of that
this.
Christmas sound like that.
No. And he was very nice. And he went straight away, I'm going to buy that. And he bought that, and I got it in again, and I sold it again. In the meantime, I had somebody else come in and say, have you got any books for a 3-year-old on building? I'm thinking, building? Ross Montgomery, here we go again!
Saving the day.
Honestly.
The building boy.
Lovely book. It's about loss.
Right.
But it's also about gain, and it's a little bit of a tribute to the Iron Giant as well. Again, marvellous. Both books published in the last couple of years. Well, one of them was 2016, one's 2018. However, recently stocked by the bookshop and selling every single time I get them in.
Yeah.
Hot cakes.
Brilliant. Thank you. John, are you gonna...
Cut there and get yourself a...
You've got a big pile.
I've got a big pile, but that's my problem.
Yeah. Oh dear. Boom, boom.
I spent an awful lot of the lockdown reading crime novels. I don't know why that was particularly, but I think it was prompted by the publication of that, which is The Red Hand by Peter Temple. It's unfortunately I'm assuming the last book that will be published with his name on it, because he's no longer with us, and it's basically, if you want it to be unkind, his collection of bottom drawer writings, but that's not what it is at all. It's really very good, but it also prompted me to read or reread everything that he'd written, and
which is quite a lot.
Well, it is, and I actually think that he's probably my favourite crime writer ever, full stop. I mean, I think every single book he wrote, he tried then to write a better one with his next one. He was famously a bit of a curmudgeon. He wrote
when you liked him.
Well, right. He wrote a series of novels, of which this is the first one, called Bad Debts, which feature a fairly traditional private detective called Jack Irish. They made some films, the first 3 of them with Guy Pearce, I think. But I actually had sort of dismissed them, and because I actually, his 2 best books, which are absolutely brilliant, are sort of standalone novels, Broken Shore and The Truth, which were the last 2 that he wrote, and The Truth won the Australian version of the Booker Prize, which is pretty rare for a crime novel, because they're way beyond that. They're sort of social commentary and everything. But in fact, the Jack Irish novels are absolutely wonderful. They're really, for what they are in terms of private eye novels, they're very, very good indeed. There's a mordant wit all the way through them, and they're just great. I love it when things work, and he definitely is one of my favourite writers.
Quality.
Yep.
Do you want to do another one?
We want me to do another one?
Yeah, go on. It's Christmas, isn't it?
It is. It does
Without
feel like
wrapping paper everywhere.
All right. Well, here's. Yeah. Here's one I have read and one I haven't. One I'm just about to start reading, which is the new novel by Richard Francis called Laura. I've loved Richard Francis's novels for years. They're just great, and he's a fairly unique kind of voice in British fiction. In fact, his first book, which is when I've loved him from, was by Richard H. Francis and was called Blackpool Vanishes.
Sci-fi.
Well, it's sort of sci-fi. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because you don't read a lot of sci-fi, do you?
No, I don't. And this is certainly not sci-fi. But Blackpool Vanishes was great. And he used to have an H in his name, which was fictitious and inserted to avoid confusion with the thriller writer Dick Francis.
Right, okay.
Yeah, as you do.
Yeah. But again, a similar kind of wit to Peter Temple in lots of ways. His last novel was about a pub, if I remember correctly, in Birmingham, and it had a bit of a flavour of Early Doors about it, if you remember.
Early Doors. To the regiment.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to this. I haven't had a chance to start it yet. But even the first line, the film had been about a serial killer, to Gerald's surprise. He must have read the wrong review. It was a film of shadows and oblique angles, long periods of quiet, interruptions of violence. More Abbey's sort of thing than his. He preferred his terror to be spectral or otherworldly, the sort that suggested more to life than you'd thought, not about some dreary, obsessive man who did the same horrible thing over and over, like a kind of job. I'll give you a flavour of what's coming from that one. Okay.
What about you?
That's good.
Do you have something else? Another present on the pile?
I got well, this is an old book now, but it's a goodie, and this is for anyone out there who's thinking of starting to write or is thinking of perhaps doing this is live beer pouring.
Yeah.
It's very
Like live
exciting.
paint watching.
You've got rather a big froth there, John.
Yeah,
I don't think you've worked in a
unfortunately.
bar for a while.
No,
Hasn't been in one for a while. Apart from here, of course.
that is true.
Best pub in Crystal Palace.
Yeah, exactly. But this is Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. John recommended it to me it seems like a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
It probably was. And this is a funny, quite spiritual book on instructions on writing and life. And I think you can only, if you ever lack energy for writing, you can literally open it on any page and find something that will kickstart you into the writing day. I always recommend this for anyone that wants to do the writing courses, of which will start again next year. But this, I think, is a great book on writing. It's got to be up there with, well, it's just, there's nothing else like it, is there?
No, I agree, and I think that I love the relevance of the title as well, where it comes from, where you just approach things bird by bird, or it's small by like sentence by sentence, word by word. It takes the panic out of thinking that you're going to write this longer thing.
Yeah, it's like concentrate on the detail, and it'll be all right.
and she's an amazing character. I mean, I remember when I read it, I thought there's not many books by a white Christian woman in I imagine something like late 40s, early 50s, with dreadlocks.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, she certainly had at the time. Yeah,
shave those off.
that I would necessarily be in any way appealing to me, but I actually read a lot of her on the back of it. Her other books, which are quite sort of Christian spiritual or whatever, which is not something I would normally dreamt of reading, but because she's such an engaging writer, and she's also very, very funny, and also terribly honest about how she ended up where she was, various forms of addiction and things, etc. No, it's great, and it's a brilliant book about writing as well.
Yeah. No, I recommend it to everyone. So, also, just a quick shout out to Anne Patchett and The Dutch House, which was possibly my other favourite book of lockdown. I think the cover, to me, I understand it's a painting, but it doesn't quite translate to the kind of energy and intellect and stuff. Yeah, and so I just wanted to shout out and say this is possibly one of the other best books that we've done for the book group, or we've read at the book group this year. It was totally loved, wasn't it? About a family and a house. But I'm not doing it justice, John. Maybe you could. Maybe you could just quickly say.
Well,
it's difficult because her writing's so exquisite, isn't it?
It is, and also the plotting is as well. The number of layers that are involved in it to for the kind of final. There are reveals that go through it, but there are also a kind of through plot as well, and she. I love it. I mean, I liked that very much. I still think my favourite is Run,
right.
But she's great. I would recommend any of her books. She's terrific.
Yeah, I remember reading State of Wonder many years ago, and it being one of those books that, I hate to say the term page turner, but she writes so intellectually well, so you can't actually turn the pages that fast, because you've got to get every single word crammed in there one by one, bird by bird, until the end, until you turn that page.
And she trusts, that's what I found so amazing about her as a writer, that she totally trusts us to be bringing our intellect to her intellect. And it's like a meeting. It was wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's what she's really good at that. Actually, meeting you 3/4 of the way, so that you've got to do the other quarter's work.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would say more half and half.
Well, okay, yeah, fair enough.
It depends how big one's intellect is.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I'm joking.
I'm good at drinking beer and poaching eggs, though.
Sorry, John, I've thrown you off.
No, you haven't thrown me off at all. Not in the slightest.
Good.
Another book, John.
Okay, well, we're sort of in a similar ballpark. I'm currently reading Sue Miller's Monogamy, and if you could say that she's a similar writer to Ann Patchett. She reminds me a little bit more of Elizabeth Strout. And this is her first novel for a little while. I mean, she's written quite a few. One of the reasons I'm reading it is that it's about a bookseller and his wife in middle age. But he's a bookseller that wears a suit.
Just like you.
Gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning
Just
to
like
have
you.
a solitary cappuccino before he later goes
Just
back
like
upstairs
you.
to give his wife a cappuccino.
A frothy coffee.
Definitely, just like you. Frothy coffee. Just to get those at the Wimpy.
I know.
Is the Wimpy in that?
But it's also, I have to say, quite saucy.
I didn't see that coming.
So far, anyway. I mean, maybe that doesn't hold up throughout the whole of it. But yeah, I mean, I'm really enjoying it at the minute, and I'd recommend it to.
It's called Monogamy.
It's called Monogamy. Recommend it to. I mean, the people on the back, Tessa Hadley, and
Is
she's
it
on the
written
front
in
as
that
well.
kind of spare way that Elizabeth Strout writes?
Yeah, it is in lots of ways. Yeah, and I mean, it seems quite sort of straightforward in a sense, but it's good. It's good. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. So, what next?
Okay. I also fairly recently read another crime novel, one that has been a big success, if not the biggest success of kind of debut crime novels this year, and that's Blacktop, Wasteland by S.A. Cosby. I actually got a copy in from America before it was published in this country. This is this country's version, but it's a really strong kind of novel about I suppose it's about a mechanic who's down on his luck and gets involved in some pretty bad things. But it's a little bit kind of Elmore Leonard, that kind of thing. But it's very, very good, very strong. As I say, it's now been kind of quite taken up by the crime community as a big book. I mean, Walter Mosley says, S.A. Cosby reinvents the American crime novel. Blacktop, Wasteland, Throms and Races. It's an intoxicating thrill of a ride, and it is. It's Southern America. It's people all living in trailer parks. It's really quite illuminating more than anything else, but for lots of reasons. But it's a very tricky plot as well. I'd thoroughly recommend it. It's very good.
I'd like to just to say the book that I've enjoyed reading most this year. John will joke that I don't read anything ever. But I do actually, in the main, I read books of more than 500 pages for a big fat book group. And at the beginning of the lockdown, I was still reading David Copperfield. And I've read some big fat books ever since. I was reading big fat books before. But in the meantime, in the very, very small window that the lockdown lifted, the shutter of lockdown lifted and then slammed back down again, I whizzed out to France and back because I had an errand to run. And while I was...
post a letter.
She had to get some baguettes.
Exactly. Some onions. No. And while I was there, I read Lev's book, Lev Perikian, in the full knowledge that he was going to be in the shop. And I have to say it was in great contrast to all the big fat books I was reading, no matter how glorious they were. Non-fiction, and I know that we had a lovely evening with him here at the shop, talks from an empty bookshop, no one else here. But I can't tell you how much just exploring everything from the sort of wasteland pavements of West Norwood and the tufts of weeds growing through the slabs all the way through to the Skye, bird watching on Skye. It was such marvellous escapism. To talk about being an armchair naturalist, it was wonderful and not a difficult read, but a very interesting read, full of British history, of naturalist history, of with references to places that we all know, with references to things like robins and curlews and God knows what else that we all know. But a lovely read and very funny, self-deprecating, with some absolutely superb swearing.
Really?
Yes, absolutely brilliant.
Great day.
Better than him.
Can't believe it.
So that was my lockdown escapism read.
Pleasure. So I'm moving on from lockdown. That's something I haven't read yet, but I'm going to put £5 on the races. On the races? No. What's it called? The bookies.
It'd be quite funny if they got the Booker Prize to be decided by the authors running.
Yeah, around
now
the
you're
circuit.
talking.
Now that I would pay for.
Yes.
Triathlon.
Yeah. But I've heard so many writers really talk about this. I haven't read it yet. Shuggy Bain by Douglas Stewart. It's shortlisted for the Booker, and this is you tell me, John. It's fairly autobiographical fiction, set in Glasgow in the early 80s, an account of a mother-son relationship. And I don't know anything else about it, but I like the first line, which I shall read out, which I'm sure the publishers won't mind. Oh, quite a lot of pages. The day was flat.
We all like a good first line like that, don't we?
I just thought that, no, it was a really good first line. I mean, yeah, and did quite a lot. Glasgow skies from the off. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to reading that.
Marvellous.
Oh, you're looking at me again.
I think so. We're doing some Mexican wave, aren't we?
All right. So, sometimes you have that terrible thing, which I had recently, of reading a book that got all these great reviews and the author got loads and loads of publicity and was in all the broadsheets in his nice sitting room and stuff. And I thought, I'll take a copy home. And I read about 50 pages and I thought, this is toss. And
wouldn't be the first time,
No.
by the way.
but then it kind of, I didn't read anything else for 2 weeks then, because it just kind of constipated me or something, it was just
Depressed you?
It was just not good. I'm not going to say what it was, you can probably guess, but
No, he will take bribes.
Come in and ask.
or DMs. But anyway, so eventually I picked up another crime novel called 8 Detectives by Alex Bavasi, and which just partly because I could see, even by just looking at it, and I did read a review, that it was going to be completely different from the book that I'd given up on. And it's great. It's a completely different kind of crime novel to anything I've talked about already tonight. It's well, the author's a PhD level mathematician, and so it's a very tricky kind of Agatha Christie. No. It's kind of Agatha Christie-esque sort of, but with lots of
Maths.
and no, with with a Russian doll-like kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's very entertaining, and it got me out of the horrible.
Constipation.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
It's a laxative of a book.
We'll say, yeah. I'm sure, I'm sure that's going to go on the paperback, isn't it? Yeah. All right. Yeah. No, it's good fun. It's that sometimes that's just what you want, is good fun.
Yeah.
And that is
Yeah.
that.
Definitely.
So speaking of fun, behind the camera over there, Willa, what are you reading at the moment, Willa?
Do you want to come and show us, Willa? Come on, camera woman extraordinaire.
Now I recognise that.
Yeah.
Where do I recognise that from? So, what is it called? You Goddess. Enjoying it, Wiz?
I am, yes.
Yeah?
Very much so. I never really took to the Greek and Egyptian goddesses and the Romans when I was younger, so it's quite nice to read it now and see all these other ones that I
Excellent.
enjoy. So yeah, no, it's been good fun.
Really good. I learnt a lot.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable, and you do look at things in another light. So
Yeah. You get a
yeah, I
new-
really recommend it actually.
A new perspective.
a new filter. Yeah, a good filter to see
Yeah,
the world
exactly,
through.
and it's not just these goddesses that we've learnt about already. It's got a really good scope of the world.
Mm.
So, yeah, filter 2. This one I'm really interested in, partly because customer driven, really, in many respects. We've sold quite a few of them already. Love in Colour, Mythical Tales from Around the World Retold. Not quite You Goddess, but not far off.
Who's the author?
Bolu, Babalola. Whether captured in the passion of love at first sight or realising that self-love takes precedence over romantic connection, the characters in Babalola's vibrant stories face up to and navigate this most complex human emotion and try to capture its intangible essence. So there's one that I am looking forward to quietly in the children's section when nobody troubles me, sticking my nose in and having a good read, seeing what the fuss is about.
Could have probably read most of it today.
Yeah, especially when it rained.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I suppose if I'm going to do my final shout out, slow on the uptake as I've been to read Bernadine, Evaristo's
Darling
Girl,
Bernadine.
Woman, Other. My word, I am whipping through it, and starts in Brixton of around a time that I recognise, and it is truly bold and the best page turner in the best way.
Love those.
and it's such great company, and I often veer away from books that seem to be like in everyone's hands for some reason, because I wanted to, and I think I had to wait because I wanted to have my own special time with it. And I'm so glad, and there's several friends that have been giving it over lockdown. My partner's been buying it for people who haven't been able to read during lockdown, and they are back in to the reading mode through this very powerful and brilliant book. So I can see why it's such a success.
We've still got copies, although I have to say, Bookshop it's been our best-selling book by a long.
Yeah,
it really
it's the time.
is. Every single day with that sells. I am so pleased for her.
And if you follow her, I mean, she's just like Desert Island Disc. She's wonderful.
Glorious.
I love her confidence and her determination. And it's her time, it's her time after all these years of writing. It's really, really special.
Yeah, marvellous. Okay,
you've got one last special
one final one. I guess it's one. It's one for all of us, actually. The three of us on the bench here. It's called All the Tiny Moments Blazing: A Literary Guide to Suburban London. It is a brick. I'll show you how thick that is. Just a terrific idea.
It's like the QV channel, isn't it, all of us?
Yeah, it's a terrific idea. And to be honest with you, I was surprised really at how much the author has managed to get into this. It sort of starts off. It says. On the bastard side, that's the first chapter, which is sort of southeast London from Deptford, New Cross, Greenwich, Woolwich, Blackheath, Charlton, Brockley and Lewisham. I can't, in just a matter of pages, the sheer volume of authors mentioned in here, from Jonathan Raban to Christopher Marlowe, John Evelyn, Paul Theroux. This is... well, actually, they do come along.
They do
come along. We go through we go through to the up in the magical airy bit. Hold on, I'm not even going through my notes here. We do find Angela Carter.
Yeah,
of course, beloved of this parish and elsewhere in South London. It goes through to Croydon, for goodness sake, there is so much there. Bernadine Evaristo features. The index alone is a primer or superb reference work on just who has written about London, whereabouts. It goes all the way through to Ilford. Who's been to Ilford? Do you know where Ilford is? Dagenham.
I didn't think that was in London.
Did you know that Daniel Defoe went to Barking? I mean, I have dipped into this. I've dipped into the beginning and the end. I have not been into the middle, which means I've not been west, I've not been east, I've hardly been north. I've only been...
We don't go north.
No. Right at the beginning, I read David Copperfield at the beginning of the year, and I was still reading it for lockdown. And it even sort of talks about Spenlow's house, which is somewhere up here in Upper Norwood, which I would just dearly love to know what Dickens, where he decided the house was going to be.
Yeah.
Probably one of those that we delivered books to that clearly don't spend enough money with us. Anyway, I highly recommend it, and I think you guys, seriously, once in, you can't get out. There's just so much in there. Penge, blah, blah, blah.
Really?
Oh, yes. But I did say to John, all the tiny moments blazing. Where did that come from? It sounded like Shakespeare, or it sounded like maybe...
I don't know.
Any ideas? Shall I read it to you? I'll read you the quote.
Keats?
Well, it could be. Did Keats come to London? You'll have to read and find out. probably only to see his publisher.
Yeah.
It gets into your bones. You don't even realise it until you're driving through it, watching all the things you've always known and leaving them behind. They're driving past the streets, the shops, the corners where they made themselves. Every ghost is out there staring. Bad skin and sunken eyes, grinning madly at them from the past. It's in their bones. Bread, booze and concrete. The beauty of it. All the tiny moments blazing. Preachers, parents, workers. Empty-eyed romantics. Going nowhere. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Kae Tempest.
Kae Tempest.
Marvellous contemporary writer of London.
It's very moving.
There you go.
That's great.
Thank you.
And a perfect way to finish us off, I think.
Yeah. And my glass, oh no,
Finished
still got a
me
few
off.
bits there. Your glass is empty. So shall we...
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.
See you all soon.
Chin chin.
Cheers.
They can find you a book for your girlfriend, your husband, your girl or your boy. And if you've got a need for an uplifting read, Justine and Jonathan can pick out a book you'll enjoy. What a book at the Bookseller, Crow on the Hill. What a book, what a book at the Bookseller, Crow on the Hill. Crystal Palace Hill, it is. But you can order online.